Hello. It's nice to be in the room. So often in life we think, wouldn't it be wonderful if I had a goal or an ambition, a place I wanted to get to, and if I went in a straight line from point A of conceiving the idea to point B of achieving. However, on a heart rate monitor, if you go from one side to the other, it's not great news. And so, really, a better reflection of what life looks like, what reminds us that we're alive, and what we should all hope for, is the trajectory of the heartbeat. The series of ups and downs tracing across the screen. The high points and low points demark moments in our lives. Moments of success, however you define that, of love, of achievement, moments of loss, of setback, of crisis. I'd like to let you in on 2 moments from my life today to set the scene. But this heartbeat that we all share is also the reason that I believe my story, in many ways, is your story written in different words. My talk today focuses on health, on adversity, and on healing, the future of healthcare. The first moment, I'm aged 19, I've just finished my exams in the first year of college. I head down to the west of Ireland, this place that has become an absolute sanctuary for me. During my teenage years, a love of water sports came out of the blue. I trained to become a lifeguard, a windsurfing instructor, and a surf instructor, and I would spend my summers on the beaches instructing other young people. That summer, I was in an Irish college instructing down in Belmullet, the wilds of the West. And on the 3rd day down there that summer, after work, I hopped on the bike and cycled off to the beach. I can still remember leaning the bike up against the sand dunes and strolling out onto the sand. Sitting down a short while later, I looked back over the scene and I could see footprints in the sand and the sun slowly setting as the waves were breaking. I just caught myself in the moment. I caught myself smiling. It was a really important moment because for the previous number of years, like all of you will remember, we go through the questioning of being a teenager, pushing out against the limits of our comfort zones, our teachers, our parents, finding how we fit in the world. Maybe a journey that never ends. But on that day, on that beach, I smiled and realized that for the first time I could remember, I was starting to become comfortable with myself, starting to get answers to some of those questions. But more importantly, that I was proud. Proud of the work that I'd put in to get where I was, and excited about what was to come. 8 weeks later comes the second moment. The first moment demarks health, physical vitality, social support, positive emotion being experienced, achievement, and meaning in my days. At the end of that summer, I went on holidays with 7 of my best friends. On the first day in Portugal, I ran down the beach for one more swim before dinner, dived into the water over a wave, not realizing just how shallow it was. My head collided with a sandbank, and in that moment, I broke my neck. The 5th vertebrae down. Slowly, I floated up to the surface, my body limp, and time slows down. the place that I loved the most was the place where my biggest challenge would arise from. The following morning, I woke up in intensive care. I still remember looking up and counting 8 screws in the light fitting above my head, noticing there was a metal cage around my head that made me look like Frankenstein, that I had tubes going down my nose and throat to keep me breathing and hydrated. The things we take for granted. I was on life support. Over the next number of months, I battled with 2 questions. Why me was the first. Why me gave me space to grieve, to feel the harsh reality. 15% muscle function. My shoulders, biceps, and wrists. That was facing reality. But eventually that left a space that brought me nowhere. It allowed me to feel, and at that point the second question entered. Why not me? Why should this have happened to anybody else? That second choice or question gave me choices. Opportunities about where to move, what might happen next, the beginning of shifting an outlook. Over the next months and years, I went from intensive care in Portugal back to Ireland, nearly didn't make it, and eventually ended up in rehab. At that time, I set what was for me a very inspiring goal. The goal was to return to college. Bear in mind, I was learning to breathe at the time. To breathe without the assistance of incredible medical machines. 13 months later, I arrived back in college, living away from home, heavily supported. Living away from home in a room in an apartment in Front Square here in Trinity. A remarkable journey, and over the next number of years, I went on to continue my studies as a health professional, qualifying. And as I embarked on that journey of study, I realized that what I was being trained for was a sick care system, a system that was focused on management of disease in all its forms. I had gone from being a person to being a patient, and on my journey back again, I didn't just want to explore sickness and disease. I also wanted to learn about health. At the moment, globally, the dominant health focus is on diseases of civilization. The rates of burnout, Gallup studies show that between 44% of people feel burned out most or all of the time, and 23% feel burned out some of the time. Stress and unresolved stress leading to adrenal fatigue, cortisol, and insulin resistance, and ultimately chronic inflammation. Metaflammation, the low-level, insidious inflammation that is so closely linked with some of the biggest diseases of our time: cardiovascular diseases, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, depression, and so on. It seems that the further we get from nature, the sicker we're becoming. There's something wholly unsustainable about that. And so it comes to the future of health, but not just the future of health, also the future of healing. Over my journey of exploring health, not just for myself, but for the patients I deal with every day, it was important for me to look at the fact that I wanted to be a health professional? Is that not what we should be training for? It's a fundamental paradigm shift, a more proactive, optimistic and positive lens. Now, over the years, there has been phenomenal advances in the medical field, in health technology. If we only look over the past number of years, what was achieved with vaccines, the possibilities of robotic surgery, the incredible orphan medications serving the unmet needs of specialist populations with rare diseases, and so much more. Every week I train in a robotic exoskeleton that helps me walk and train my body. The medical advances have been phenomenal. But with these advances, people have been living longer with chronic disease, with disability. So not only do we need a focus on health innovation, but also on healing in the absence of complete cure. Now, there's environmental elements to this, but there's also personal responsibility. Environmental elements in the macro scale, in terms of policy, public policy, but also on the micro scale, in terms of personal practices. We know more now that from psycho-neuro, immunology, the gut-brain axis, the mind-body connection, that more important than ever is a rounded, anti-inflammatory lifestyle. Einstein said that we can't solve problems using the same thinking we use to create them. But in creating so many of the problems that we face in the health in the modern world, maybe we weren't thinking at all. The implications of the lifestyles we're living only became clear over time. But awareness precedes change always, and now we have new awareness. And so as I think about where can we turn in terms of leaning towards the future of health and well-being, yes, there's the sexy, glamorous health innovation, health technology, pharma, all of these things that are doing incredible work on our health. But there's also places that we can look and learn from that are far less glamorous, but far more important. 3 places that we need to look. First is to bring the lessons from the past into the present. In understanding how to live well, we look to the Stoics, who taught us how to live a meaningful life. They taught us about self-reflection, about virtue. They taught us about choosing thoughts, decisions, and actions. We look to the Buddhists in terms of mindfulness and emotional regulation. So many of our health-inhibiting behaviors come from running away from what is. The third place we look to in the past is yogic traditions, things like martial arts, which teach us to integrate our body and our breath. The second place that we look is to lessons from our grandparents. Modern science is showing that lifestyle medicine is an integral part of how we move forward in a healthy way. Using lifestyle as medicine was so natural to our grandparents. What were the things that they taught us that has been borne out in the research now? Eat food that's close to hand. Whether it's vegetables that we grow or things that we can see on the farm. Movement, regular, simple movement. Community and relationships. Stress relief. Putting the feet up after the day's work. These are things that are so fundamental, but we're having to educate about them now. Lifestyle medicine is a new movement that has been trained across healthcare settings around the world. And it's funny to even think that we need to train it. But two fields that are bringing so much of this learning from the past into the present are positive health and positive psychology, movements that started over the last 20 years in research and are now coming into the modern world in terms of practice. What do we learn from the science of well-being? We know that optimism can be learned in the same way that helplessness can. Optimism predicts better health outcomes and lifestyle behaviors. We look to a model called PERMA. PERMA stands for positive emotions, engagement or flow, relationships, meaning and accomplishment. The extent to which we measure well on the PERMA scales is the extent to which we experience well-being, meaning, and fulfillment in our days. These are things that can be trained. These are things we can reflect on in our own lives. They don't only give us subjective experience of well-being and health, but they lead to better health-seeking behaviors. The third thing we can look to from the science of well-being is a focus on strengths. Martin Seligman, the founder of strengths research, looked back over the traditions, the dominant traditions around the world. He found 6 core virtues and 24 characteristic personality strengths across all these different places that he looked to around the world. Identifying and leaning into our strengths, particularly from a young age, develops a sense of competence, a sense of assuredness, a sense that I have something to bring to the world and I am a valuable and valued individual. Teaching people about strengths and leaning into them helps to buffer against the challenges they face, makes them more optimistic and resilient, and so many of the things that we need for our health and well-being. The magic ratio is of 3-to-1. 3-to-1 positive emotions versus negative emotions. This is what we need to flourish in life. Positive emotions have been shown to broaden and build. Broaden and build our mind, our level of open-mindedness, creativity, complex thinking, openness to others, openness to new information and ideas, to build our capacity. These are the things that we need to engage well in life. The final piece, gratitude and compassion. The negativity bias is so strong in our minds because our minds haven't changed all that much since we were cavemen and women. The shift to gratitude, the things that we have, the things that are working well, the things we can appreciate, begin to appreciate, and shift our mind from a negativity bias ever so slightly back to a more neutral place. Compassion. Compassion for self and for others, because at the end of the day, we're only human. We don't get it right all the time. we're a work in progress. So often we go looking for the silver bullet in terms of health. Health innovation is doing phenomenal things. We look to treatment and to cure it all with the silver bullet. And as important as that is, as important as it is to continue to nudge health from the outside in, it's really important to remember that true healing always happens from the inside out. Thank you very much.